Yes.
Maybe I start with a very simple one, talking about quantities. So what numbers of manuscripts or authors do you have estimating all the distributed resources? So it's just to get an idea how much or how little.
We don't know exactly, but the figure that I quoted from the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library of 20,000 Syriac manuscripts that they alone have photographed, their procedure is going around to monasteries in the Middle East and elsewhere and photographing all of the manuscripts that they can. So we know it's above that number, but it's actually impossible to estimate on the basis of the data that we have. But it has to be several tens of thousands of manuscripts, many of which, a high proportion of which, have not been cataloged. I should mention as a follow-up to that, we have no idea how many Syriac works there are in existence, because nothing like a clavis of Syriac literature has been attempted. So at this point, I couldn't even guess how many thousands, certainly thousands, but possibly tens of thousands Syriac works there are. As in Greek, I think you would have at least a way to give an estimate of the ones that have been cataloged, edited, and so on. Yes?
Yeah, maybe also a simple question for you, but I'm not an expert in nuclear. When you talk about quantities, you also said there are people around the world typing in all the Syriac literature manually.
Yes.
Is there no way to automate this process for text recognition software or something like this?
There are people working on it. George Kiraz at the Beth Mardutho Institute in New Jersey he's actually a native Aramaic speaker and a scholar of Syriac and of computer science. So he's the one who created the Syriac fonts that are used for most things now, the open type fonts that are used. And he's working on this problem. There have been a few attempts at it in the past. One of the difficulties is that Syriac, like Arabic, connects the letters to each other. And so Arabic, of course, has a lot larger corpus to work with, and many more people who are interested in solving that problem. So that problem has largely been solved for Arabic, but not for Syriac. And we've been toying around with, I haven't been personally involved, but as I've seen some of the various technologies for reading, for text recognition of manuscripts and handwriting and so on, I've been inquiring, could this be applied to Syriac? But as of yet, we don't have anything. And it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, because in order to train this kind of software, you need a lot of transcribed text. And we don't have a lot of transcribed text, so it's difficult. But I hope within the next few years, maybe. Yeah. Yes?
You mentioned that you're working on transferring from TEI to Armenia.
Yes.
Could you say a bit more about it? How I can think about it, how it works? Because right now I can't. I have no idea how it would be done.
Okay, sure. I will try. Since I'm not a computer scientist, some of the things, some of the issues with, what should I call it? Some of the conceptual issues are above my head on this matter. But are you talking about the mechanical process of how it's transformed, or conceptually what in TEI would correlate to what in RDF?
The conceptual one.
Okay, yes. So conceptually in TEI, best practice, not all projects do this, but best practice is, of course, to identify your basic entities with URIs. So for our project, that's persons, places, works, bibliographic items. All of those get their own URI, and all of them each of those URIs has a record corresponding to it. Now, that, of course, provides the basis for a basic RDF statement applying a label such as a name to a URI. So person 239 has this name. Okay. The larger problem then is in making further statements about those relationships between entities. And as far as I can tell, the best practice on this is to use the TEI relation element. So TEI has this relation element. There are often alternative ways to render things in TEI. So for example, if I'm talking about the relationship between a bibliographic item, an edition of a text, and the work, there would be other ways to portray that relationship, such as there's a related item feature in TEI, element in TEI. But we try to stick to using the relation element because these best practices that seem to be evolving at the moment are to use that relation element and to set it up as an RDF triple. So if you're familiar with the relation element, it has an active attribute, which then becomes the equivalent of the RDF subject, a ref attribute, which becomes the equivalent of the property or the verb, and the passive attribute, which becomes the equivalent of the object. So then in the active, you would put the URI of an entity, or if you need to, the hash URI of something in the document. Then in the ref, you put that RDF property, and in the passive, you put another URI of an entity or a hash URI. And then at this point, what you have to do currently is to run a transformation that looks for those relations and generates that RDF from those relations. There's been a lot of discussion about whether there are better ways of doing this. In terms of people have suggested all kinds of things, using RDFA, adding RDF-like attributes to the TEI syntax. There's a lot of discussion about this, and I don't feel qualified to say what the best option is. But at this point, that is the option that I'm aware of that is most used, seems to be best practice, and results in well-formed TEI, valid TEI. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that you were looking for other examples of stuff like this, and I remembered Coptic Scriptorium.
Okay. I have come across the project Coptic Scriptorium. Are they modeling works in TEI?
Yeah.
Okay. I need to dig into that. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, one question. When you show that slide with the chronological distribution, there was something saying, or maybe you said, that it's derived from URIs, if I understood well.
Yes.
Are you using also URIs to express dates?
Yes.
Because this is, well...
to express dates?
Dates.
Not dates. No, this is on the... what I've done here is the digital manuscript catalog that David Michelson and his students are creating from Wright's catalog. In that, whenever they have a title of a manuscript item, they attach a ref to it, pointing to the work URI, if we already have one, if one already exists in our system. And so I've used the work URIs for all biblical manuscripts to retrieve those manuscript items. And then the dates are actually on the basis of standard dates encoded into TEI attributes. Yeah.
then thank our speaker again, and we can move to the right and continue the discussion. Thank you very much.